morning and good morning. We are going to jump right in to where we left off. This should be the final part of going over the Homosexual Manifesto. And then as we end that, we will be jumping into the 1972 gay rights platform of their state and federal demands. 1972, that's the year I was born. You know, a lot of people don't realize that, and some do know this fact, that in 1972, the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, changed the definition of homosexual from a mental disorder to a sexual orientation. But even the people that know that fact, many of them don't know that in 2012, pedophile was in the APA, the American Psychiatric Association book, as a mental disorder. And in 2013, they changed the wording, making it mean an adult-child relationship. Sounds like a sexual orientation definition to me. With that said, we're going to dive in to the Homosexual Manifesto, the last few paragraphs. We left off yesterday at "We shall rewrite history. History filled and debased with your heterosexual lies and distortions. We shall portray the homosexuality of the great leaders and thinkers who have shaped the world." So in other words, they want to expose the homosexual sin of the many in the past. We will demonstrate that homosexuality and intelligence and imagination are inextricably linked, and that homosexuality is a requirement for true nobility, true beauty in a man. Lord have mercy. We shall be victorious because we are fueled. Pay attention here. The LGBT movement says we shall be victorious because we are fueled with the ferocious bitterness of the oppressed who have been forced to play seemingly bit parts in your dumb heterosexual shows throughout the ages. We too are capable of firing guns and manning the barricades of the ultimate revolution. And then the last line of the Homosexual Manifesto says, "Tremble, hetero swine, when we appear before you without our masks." Now, folks, I don't know what you think. I don't know what you believe this really is, but it is exactly what it appears to be. It is an agenda. This agenda that is created to indoctrinate, to just kind of brainwash you. Wow, it's going to brainwash you. That's what they want to do. They want to have you just fall right into this, to be enveloped in this madness, in this chaos, so that you too will be desensitized and become one of their minions, so that your sons and grandsons can become one of their minions, so that they can recast your children and your grandchildren in their own image. See, JR had to get his anti-rainbow glasses out. But we're gonna switch over to the 1972 Homosexual Rights Platform. And as we do that, we're going to remember that this movement, being just that, a movement, is focused on your children. But I want everyone to really see here exactly where and when this movement started to become the largest, darkest, most deadliest mass that this globe has ever seen. I want everyone to pay attention that in the 70s and the 60s, how it absorbed other movements. So the 1972 Gay Rights Platform, created at the National Coalition of Gay Organizations Convention held in Chicago, of course, Chicago, in 1972. At the federal level, these are their demands. Amend all federal civil rights acts, other legislation, and government controls to prohibit discrimination in employment, housing, public accommodations, and public services. Folks, I don't believe in anybody being discriminated against because of their race, their color, their age, their handicap, their disability, things that they can't help, things that they're born and created that way. We're created white, we're created brown, we're created Asian, we're created Hispanic, but since we're not created homosexual, should we be forced to hire a homosexual? Well, the law says yes. As of now, yes. But in 1972, this is when they started making the demand. It's kind of like making somebody hire a drug addict, making somebody hire an alcoholic. That's the reason that people get fired from employment. But that's what it is, right? Homosexuality is an addiction, just like any other addiction, just like any other sin. So the second part of their federal demands were issuance by the president of an executive order prohibiting the military from excluding, for reasons of their sexual orientation, persons who of their own volition desire entrance into the armed services, and from issuing less than fully honorable discharges for homosexuality, and the upgrading to fully honorable all such discharges previously issued with retroactive benefits. Folks, let's look at transgenders in the military. In order to be transgender, you have to be undergoing intense psychological evaluations and care. You are on medications that alter your body, your mood, the development of your body, the reactions of your body. Why would we want anybody under intense psychological care to be armed and guarding our back in the military? I mean, when we think about these things logically, it kind of just doesn't make sense. Number 3, issuance by the president of an executive order prohibiting discrimination in the federal civil service because of sexual orientation, in hiring and promoting and prohibiting discriminations against homosexuals in security clearances. Of course, this is just like number 1. Number 4, elimination of tax inequities, victimizing single persons and same-sex couples. They want all the God-given rights to marry somebody of the opposite sex, but then they want the extra right or the special right to marry somebody of the same sex. It's never been fair because it doesn't make sense, right? They want elimination of bars to the entry, immigration, and naturalization of homosexual aliens. This is where they started taking on the minority and the immigration movement. One mass absorbing other masses, becoming the largest, darkest, deadliest mass that our planet has ever seen. Number 6, federal encouragement and support for sex education courses. Know what they're trying to do in your libraries right now? They want to teach children about homosexual sexual activity. They want these courses prepared and taught by homosexuals, presenting homosexuality as a valid, healthy preference and lifestyle as a viable alternative to heterosexuality. First of all, if I didn't pack it already, I would bring it over and show you how thick the book is that I got from Mass Resistance of all of the health and psychological dangers of the homosexual death style. But it's huge. The homosexual activity has even more health risks than just deviant sexual acts between men and women and women and women. Because you are inserting things in places they weren't meant to go, that they don't belong. It causes a lot of health issues as they get older. I mean, I've been out of the movement for 10 years, but I still suffer from some health issues that stem from my life choices. Number 7 is to appropriate executive orders, regulations, and legislation banning the compiling, maintenance, and dissemination of information on an individual's sexual preferences, behavior, and social and political activities for dossiers and data banks. Number 8, I'm going to get through the federal because I really want to get to the state. Federal funding of aid programs of homosexuals organizations. So they want the feds, they want everybody to fund all of their homosexual programs designed to alleviate the problems that are encountered by homosexuals, which are engendered as an oppressive, sexist society. So if you do not accept, condone, affirm, confirm, and celebrate their sin, then you are an oppressive, sexist person. Wow. Pretty sad. Pretty sad when you think about it, that it's okay for them to say that you are an oppressive, sexist person because you don't want to accept them or accept their sexual acts, their sin. But then they want the same right to be able to speak out against you that they want to keep you silent. And they want the feds to pay for it. Number 9 on the federal level is immediate release. Now this is a good one. Immediate release of all homosexuals that are now incarcerated in detention centers, prisons, and mental institutions because of sexual offense charges relating to victimless crimes or sexual orientation. Wow. So they want men and women, and this was 1972, y'all. So they want men and women who were convicted of crimes to be released from the institution that they're in, and that adequate compensation be made for the physical and mental duress encountered. And if that's not enough, they want all existing records relating to incarceration be immediately expunged. Can you even believe that this is something that anybody would even entertain? On the state level, they want all federal legislation and programs enumerated in demands 1, 6, 7, 8, and 9 above, blah, blah. Number 2, they want a repeal of all state laws prohibiting private sexual acts involving consenting persons, equalization for homosexuals and heterosexuals for the enforcement of all laws. Well, see, first of all, there can never be equal anything from heterosexuality to homosexuality, because heterosexual is not the opposite of homosexual. The opposite of homosexual is redeemed. The opposite of homosexual is set free. The opposite of homosexual is freed from a bondage of sin. The opposite of homosexual is not heterosexual. It's sanctified, redeemed, justified, touched by the one true living God. You see, even Christians have the tendency to say, well, what about heterosexual sin? All sin is heterosexual sin, because all sinners are heterosexual. Must be, I mean, I can go over this every day. All homosexuals are heterosexual. All pedophiles are heterosexual. All liars, all cheaters, all drunkards, all adulterers, all coveters, they're all heterosexual. Because we are all heterosexual in God's good and perfect design. Much like your DNA, you cannot change it, right? So when we speak of homosexuality being a sin, let's not speak of homosexual sin, but of homosexuality as a sin, along with the drugs and the alcohol and the sodomy. And remember, sodomy includes oral, anal sex, bestiality, or any unfruitful act, because it is defined as a crime against nature. It is not defined as anal sex only. And just because the law of the land, here's a good one for you. Just because the law of the land decided to call anal sex sodomy, doesn't mean you have to accept it. Because if that's the case, if you accept that the law of the land called anal sex sodomy, then you better accept the law of the land that two men can get married. Words matter, and we better start using them correctly, folks. Repeal number 3 of the state level. Repeal all state laws prohibiting solicitation for private voluntary sexual liaisons and laws prohibiting prostitution, both male and female. They want prostitution to be legal. Prostitution, by the way, folks, is the number 1 means of finances, I definitely won't call it employment, but of profit in the LGBT movement, along with pedophilia and We can go on and on. Number 4, enactment of legislation prohibiting insurance companies and any other state-regulated enterprises from discriminating because of sexual orientation in insurance and in bonding or any other prerequisite to employment or control of one's personal whatever. Anyway, so, insurance companies don't want to take on high-risk clients. And that is their right. They shouldn't have to take on high-risk clients. If you are at the risk of receiving some type of disease, then I'm not going to insure you. That's my choice. It's my right. Number 5, enactment of legislation so that child custody, adoption, visitation rights, foster parenting, and the like shall not be denied because of sexual orientation or marital status. You see right here, under cover, they absorbed the single parent movement here as well. Because not only are they saying, well, you can't stop people from adopting or from being foster parents or from getting custody of our children because we are practicing sinners, because we're practicing homosexuality, but you can't do it to people just because they're not married either. So on top of their goal in that one, and just in number 5, they've also accepted and taken on the single parents, even the ones who aren't engaging in homosexuality. But everywhere now, foster care, the adoption services, the courts, there's homosexuality and there are rainbows in all of those places. JR, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I want you to keep in mind, we're talking about a group of people, I'll call them humans, that want to have sex with anyone, regardless of age, at any time and in any manner. And keep number 5 in mind when you talk about child custody, adoption, visitation rights, foster parenting, etc. Just want to get that out there.
Amen. And now you have the state government. See, this was 72. But now you got state and federal government stepping in and saying, well, if you won't let your child, your little boy, take puberty blockers, if you won't let your little boy take female hormones, if you won't let your little boy choose to be a girl, then we'll remove him from your home and we'll put him in an LGBT-friendly foster home. So in other words, the government is going to step in, remove your child, and hand your child over to predators who will use them, abuse them, profit off of them, pass them around, and then toss them out like garbage when they are of no more good to them. Number 6, repeal all state laws prohibiting transvestism and cross-dressing. Do we even have to discuss that one? Men don't need to be dressing like women. Women do not need to be dressing or acting like men. Number 7. This is one that Bader Ginsburg is trying and definitely going to try with this movement. They want to repeal all laws governing the age of sexual consent. Not many people know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg, in her book, referred to dropping the age of sexual consent to like 10 or 11. And that is the mission and the goal of this movement. And number 8, repeal all legislative provisions that restrict the sex or number of persons entering into a marriage unit. and the extension of legal benefits to all persons who cohabit regardless of sex or numbers. So, 1972, the LGBT movement made a demand to allow two men or two women, or two men and a woman, or two women and a man to be married. This takes us right back to the destruction of the natural family and how God intended it to be. Monday, we are going to jump from 1972 to the platform of the 1993 March on Washington for lesbian, gay, and bi equal rights and liberation. The action statement preamble to the platform. The LGBT movement, at least they recognize themselves as a movement and not a community. It recognizes that our quest for social justice fundamentally links us to the struggles against. Now, here is where they are openly absorbing the other movements, thus making them such a large and such a deadly movement. They're saying that them struggling with their sin links them to the same struggles against racism and sexism, class bias, economic injustice, and religious intolerance. You know, you can't help what race you were born. You can't help what sex you were born, what gender, because you know there's only two, male or female. You can't help what you're raised in. You can't help your economic situation that you grow up in. You can choose your religion, and you can make your economic situation better. But there are some things that you cannot change, meaning that you are created that way. No one's created a homosexual or a transgender. Bisexuality doesn't even exist. But no one's created that way. But they want to link their struggle with their sin, with their deviant acts, with the same struggles of racism and sexism, class bias, economic injustice, and religious intolerance. We must realize that if one of us is oppressed, we are all oppressed. Let's absorb these other movements so that they think we sympathize with them, making it easier for us to desensitize this nation. The diversity of our movement requires and compels us to stand in opposition to all forms of oppression that diminish the quality of life for all people. We will be vigilant in our determination to rid our movement and our society of all forms of oppression and exploitation. And that's something they want to be rid of exploitation, but that's what they're doing to your children and your grandchildren. They're exploiting children. They're sexualizing children. So that all of us can develop to our full human potential without regard to race. You're created that way. Religion, that's a choice. Sexual orientation, you're created heterosexual, so anything you choose outside of that is sin. and it's a choice. Identification, I don't even know what that means. Identity, your identity is found in Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ only. Your gender, you're either male or female. There's no such thing as gender expression. It's a made-up term. Ability, age, or class. This is what we're going to dive into on Monday, folks. And I'm so bothered that there are people who truly do not see, well, I can't even say they do not see, that do not want to see. And even if they do see it, they don't want to admit it or talk about it out of fear of offending somebody or hurting their feelings. And it sounds a bit selfish to me. If you're more worried about keeping somebody in your life than you are about them receiving the hope for eternal salvation, then you may be a very far cry from the very righteousness of which you've been called. Lord willing, I'll see you all on Monday morning. God bless. I love you all. Peace.